Right, there we go.
Okay, guys. Right, what's this one? Number one. Shouting out quick, Imago Dei, everybody got that? Yeah. Number two. Just shout out. Transcendent, good. Number three. Brilliant. Okay, good. That was intentionally brief. More interesting things to talk about today. Right, we've got new heading, number 7, Catholic arts. Interesting, okay. I'm going to have to miss Mr. Russo, who I enjoy. He's confident, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He's decent. He swishes pens. He swishes board pens. I'm not happy. So, art. And we're going to just jump straight into 7.1 symbolism. In art.
Which I've got actually, I don't know why I did that, sorry. We've got 7.2 painting as well, which is all just the same thing.
Unnecessarily split up. What is art? Well, what is art for? Maybe that's an easier question to think about. What is art for? Somebody who doesn't do art. Who does art?
Oh, we don't like take art, but draw.
Okay. Do you take art? Sorry, Millie, sorry. You take art. Good. Suppose it's not more. What's the point of art? Fun. Get to sit and quietly draw stuff. What is art for?
To show others cool things.
Okay. Show others cool things. What is art? That gives a capital. What is art for? Tell me more about to show other cool things. What do you mean by that?
Well, like with other kind of subjects, it's like sure there's like a bit of creativity, but you're kind of limited to a certain kind of thing. But with art, you can really just like do anything, and so it can have like loads of symbolism and mean something, or it can just be nothing because it can just be a little thing.
Great. Expression of creativity. Can you write this down? Expression of creativity. I'm sort of paraphrasing a little bit. Are you happy with that as roughly what you meant by what you said? So sort of, you have this free expression. You can just sort of do anything. Okay. Am I now an artist, Max?
Well, it doesn't have to mean anything to everyone, but like it could mean something to you. That scribble.
Does it?
No, but it
So,
could.
am I an artist?
No.
I have freely expressed my creativity.
Then yes, you are an artist.
Yes, I am an artist. I think. Listen, I don't think you're wrong. I think this is actually a really great definition. I'm being a bit difficult about it now. Maybe there's more to it than just that. Maybe it needs to be what could we say? Skillful expression of creativity. Thoughtful. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
But
like an
maybe-
expression of what you can do and putting your creativity into paper and into tasks.
I think part of the problem and part of part of where we're going to probably have some disagreement today, or at least some reluctance to be really strict about our definition of what art is for, is because the last 100 years art was that, wasn't it? Or it has leaned towards just like, oh yeah, well I'm an artist because I say I'm an artist. Ha, I've made some art, leave me alone. It's art. Well, if I knew the right people, and I could sort of talk about it in a way that was like, yes, well, it's a critique of the art industry and blah, blah, blah. Like I could maybe magically sell that for like hundreds of thousands of pounds, even if that's it. So the part of the complication is that as we often do in these lessons, we're bumping up against some of the ways in which the modern world has tried to dismantle what we once understood just everybody would know. What is the purpose of art? Expression of creativity, yes, in a skillful way. I thought I should only do one element skillful. Or two, one, two, not three.
Bring its turn.
No problem. Well, let's just go with two. Expression of creativity in a skillful way. To make something beautiful. And Max, I think you mentioned meaning, didn't you?
Yeah, that has different meanings to other people. Like the scribble that you drew could like mean something like amazing to someone else, and then others wouldn't like it because they don't understand the meaning or they don't kind of like that style of art. Because there's loads of different styles of art, so that different people will enjoy differently.
True. Yeah. So it's open to interpretation. It's maybe open to subjective opinions, I suppose. Some people are going to like it, some people aren't. I actually look, as a statement of fact, it's true that some people prefer certain styles of art over others and respond in different ways. That's definitely true. Listen, we don't have time to go into a long discussion about this, but is there an objective standard of beauty? Max says no.
Because everyone has a different
Kind of. But at the same time, if you do, like they've done sort of studies, like, okay, if we take human beauty, actually, realistically, if I asked everybody to write down who they think are the top 5 most attractive celebrities, we're likely to come up with a list of very similar names, right? Or they will share very similar features. There are sort of objective standards of beauty. Most people respond particularly to certain faces and all the rest of it. Yeah.
But creativity, there is some sort of baseline for what's considered good.
Yeah.
And it's based on the amount of effort you put in and what it looks like to other people.
Okay.
Because like even if you put a lot of effort in, but it looks awful, it's not a good piece of art.
Yeah. True. So so there's a kind of almost a capitalist model of art. Something that somebody's willing to pay for. Something that people are willing to say, yeah, that's good enough. So
often art uses symbolism to express some kind of deeper meaning. Now again, there was a conscious effort after the First World War in particular to dismantle everything that everybody understood art was for, to take it apart. Up until the First World War, you would have all kinds of I could pull them up. I'm not going to do it now, but there were all kinds of beautiful paintings of battles that take the kind of the destruction, the misery, the suffering, the pain of warfare, but presented it in a beautiful way that redeems the suffering, that transcends it, that lifts it, elevates it, and says, well, yeah, these people died, but they died for a reason, or they died with honor, they died with a certain pride. Their death wasn't for nothing. In 10 minutes.
Art also isn't just used for in like a monetary way, but it can also just be to just for fun or to express itself. It doesn't matter if people don't like it. Like I draw, but I doubt I'm very good at it, but that doesn't really matter because I'm still enjoying myself. So it doesn't all have to be about the money. Like I could be selling art for money right now if I wanted, but that's not what it is to me. It can be just for fun, which is how I just do art. I do it for money.
That's true. So then we have that's a really interesting question. So you're kind of thinking about what is art for from the perspective of the artist, right? That for you don't necessarily care if anybody likes it or is interested in it. That's not what it's for. It serves a very different function for you. It's something that you enjoy doing. Maybe exactly, it's a calming thing to do. So maybe, don't take this question the wrong way. Is that art, or is that drawing? Maybe it is.
It can be art. Well, if the intention is just to relax, that doesn't mean people won't still like it, but you can still sell it. But the main idea is to relax, but you can also sell it. But money is not the main
It's
idea.
not the reason for it. So potentially there's a kind of a meeting point, right? You're doing it for your own reasons, but if somebody values it and likes it, then that kind of makes it art, maybe, because it's then sort of serving a public function as well as a private one. That's a really interesting idea. So there is a kind of public-private thing going on with art as well. Okay, so we've sort of explored a few ideas there. I'm going to give you a little bit of my take on it. So, art elevates. I promise you this won't be super long. Art elevates ordinary human experiences and feelings to a transcendent level. So it kind of abstracts them. You don't necessarily perfectly portray the scene of brutal destruction around you, for example. You find some beauty in it that lifts it, that makes you see things in another way. To see this one particular moment as telling a deeper truth, as telling a truth about humanity as a whole. So it takes those experiences to a transcendent level and helps us feel part of something bigger and maybe better than ourselves. And again, tell I'm interested in this topic. I'd love to. There's actually a brilliant documentary that talks about this at great length. It's really, really brilliant. If you're interested, Google "Why Beauty Matters." It's about an hour long. It's really, really good. So that's sort of art in the abstract, but then sacred art, because obviously that's what we're going to be talking about. Sacred art aims to use beauty to reveal and help us understand the divine and therefore ourselves as well, given that we are intimately related to the divine, to God. Better. And to be lifted up in meditation or contemplation of its beauty. So there's something, I mean, again, I won't bang on about it, but when we encounter truly beautiful art and we let it work on us, if we're open to it, then it touches us in a really unique way. Like I could stand here and read the Bible at you or teach you a bunch of theology as I do all the time, and you know, I know, you know, well, you're going to switch off. It's too much. It's okay, yeah. It's too direct. Too many words. And up at a certain point, we sort of reach saturation point. Art does something different. It can kind of communicate exactly the same stuff, but it does it in a way that grabs our hearts. Have a look on the board back there. You see the pictures of the cathedral on the bottom, the black and white ones. That's Chartres Cathedral. Again, do a whole lesson on that. I'm not going to. I went there, I think about 15 years ago, before I was even slightly a Catholic. If you'd have asked me what do you think about Catholicism at that point, I would have said load of rubbish, funny hat, and that would have been it. That is a Catholic cathedral in France, just outside Paris. And going there was one of the most profound experiences of my life, just because of how incredibly beautiful it was. The power of walking into this enormous building, knowing that it had been built 900 years ago. At the time, they cleaned it up, and I'm really annoyed by it, but at the time it was covered in like black soot and incense all over the walls. I mean, you've all been in cathedrals, I hope, or at least seen pictures of it. Really huge space, pillars that go up right to the ceiling, massive columns all over it. And it was all thick with incense, and so the whole place smelled of this amazing incensey smell. And then you have this rich, incredibly intense blue light coming in from the stained glass windows, which also are huge, and there's loads of them. I went there again in the summer, and I realised that actually that was the place where I first started to become Catholic. Just walking through those doors and having that experience, it grabbed me in an intuitive way before I had any kind of intellectual interest in Christianity. Beauty does that. I'd love that. One day I'll have to do a class trip or something. So So symbolism is really, really powerful. It does something to us. Symbolism is art's indirect way of expressing truth through images. That helps to activate and capture our hearts as well as our minds. All right, so 7.3, Michelangelo's creation. Jacob, you to go. Of Adam.
Shall I take my
Big stuff, yeah. I don't think you can do that. Let me share. Has anyone heard of him? He is one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, along with Leonardo, Raphael, and Donatello, all of whom actually, I don't know where they decided that. They are all Renaissance artists in Italy. He's an Italian Renaissance, late Renaissance, I should probably say, virtually very much. Late Renaissance artist, genius, absolute, in fact, I'm going to say artistic genius. He did paintings, sculptures. We'll look at one of his sculptures later in the course. Architecture. I'm pretty sure he anything that is like visual arts that you would imagine people did in the Renaissance time, he was doing it. An absolute genius and an incredibly prolific work as well. Just produced hugely important works. Like this, he set the standard for painting, for sculpture, for architecture for generations, literally. So I won't make you write this down, but the thing that we're going to look at today is the creation of Adam, which is in the Sistine Chapel. The Sistine Chapel is it's inside the Vatican City, which is the home of the Catholic Church. It's where the popes get elected. The Sistine Chapel, they kind of, it's got lockable doors. They stick all the cardinals, all these kind of big, important bishops, because they think they're important. They lock them in, and they can't leave until they've elected the next pope. This is after the pope before dies, normally. Last time. So he painted these frescoes of the creation of Adam and lots of other biblical scenes all the way around the Sistine Chapel. It's phenomenal. We're going to look at the creation of Adam because, well, you know, that's kind of the deal with this unit. So, this is not it, but it's a creation of Adam. So it's not like he was the first person to think of like painting the creation of Adam. This was somebody else's attempt before him, and in a minute you'll see that Michelangelo takes a completely different approach. Well, very different. So we see God. Like, we're going to look a lot about composition and structure in these images. Here you have God drawing Adam from the horizontal plane up to the vertical. How do you think that expresses a really important religious idea that's going on in the creation of that? Well, is this literally what happened in the Bible story? Not quite, is it? But, I mean, we can imagine, we can infer that this might have happened afterwards. What are we told about Adam's creation?
I was just going to say it's like God saving him from evil and the devil. Because like he's lying on the floor.
Well, okay. I'm gonna slightly adjust what you've said because you're not completely wrong. I think there's actually something quite good there. Let's say death. If we say that roughly speaking, this is the earth. Adam is dead matter, isn't he? He's just stuff. God, by his very nature, is upright. He is alive. Yeah, you with me? So we have sort of the forces of life, the forces of death. So yeah, in a sense, there is that kind of, we know the relationship between Satan and death. So I don't need to go on about it too much. Go on, Max.
And because of like what you do on Adam is like him being lifted up from death.
Precisely, exactly. Which does express something really important about the Genesis story, doesn't it? That where does Adam get his life from? From God. Yeah. Before he was earth, right? There's a kind of the horizon. That's the line of the earth. So Adam comes from the earth. He's dead matter, but then God comes down. Right? There's also this sort of up and down thing that we get with a vertical line. God has come down and now lifts Adam up, helps him up to life, gives him something of his own identity as well. Right? Imago Dei, Adam is made in God's image, and so he's being brought up to share in this vertical nature of God. Also think about that. How many animals are there that walk around on two legs? Very, very few. Virtually none. It's a very human thing, isn't it? It's not unique to ostriches and kangaroos, but I can't think of many other examples.
It's very rare. That could mean symbolize something from death or doomsday, or they could just be on Mars.
Yes, but probably not. Okay, so I'm not going to, we're not going to analyse this to death because it's just for interest so far. But you can see that this was a kind of theme that was developed a little bit. So here we have again another artistic representation of that scene, and this was a very common way of doing it. You have God vertical, and you have Adam getting kind of pulled up. That's cool. Yes. Here, Adam, you can see Adam's almost literally coming out of the rocks. He's sort of being pulled out from the earth. What's going on here? Slightly different. You want to work it out? Yeah. So here we have Adam sleeping. You've got God vertical again. And you have Eve being pulled up out of Adam. Yeah.
It says in Genesis that like Eve was like made of the same material Adam was.
Yeah.
Or just from Adam.
Yes, this is actually probably the most biblically accurate image that I've shown you so far in today's lesson. This is almost an exact depiction of how it's described in the Bible. God put Adam to sleep and pulled Eve out of his rib, out of his side. So yeah, that's interesting. Which side of Adam is she being pulled out of? Right. A bit of a parallel. I don't know if I've talked to you about it before, but the spear in Christ's side was in the right side. Out came blood and water, the birth of the church, because the sacraments, baptism and the Eucharist. The church is the bride of Christ, just like Eve is the bride of Adam. But that's for another day. Anthony, is it super important, or can I move on? Okay, so this is the thing then. This is Michelangelo, and I'm going to give you your own copies. And I'm sorry because I know how much you like playing with the whole bunch, but I've already got. So, just have a look. While I'm passing these around, have a look and try and think about what are the differences between what you've been looking at up till now and the one that we've got now. So how is this different? Think particularly about the structure, the composition. So, yeah, oh, you got to just keep it. Max.
So like Adam's lying on Earth again.
So Adam's basically as he is in all those others, isn't he?
Yeah, but like
Very similar position.
God's not completely upright because like he's reaching out.
Yeah.
And then I also noticed at the bottom left of like this hand thing, which I think like,
yeah, everybody spots that.
is that like the devil like trying to grab him back?
That is a lovely idea. I'm afraid it's just part of the next fresco along. Yeah, I know. Everybody spots that. It's an interesting. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe Michelangelo planned it that way as a kind of extra little detail that makes us wonder about. Yeah, certainly. Well, we'll talk about some of the things that might be foreshadowed in this because there's a lot to pull out. We probably won't get through all of it today. Yeah.
I think God the angels are on the pink things in the shape of human brain.
Oh, yes, very good. We will talk about that as well. Let's just focus for a minute on this positioning thing. What's interesting about God's sort of the line? Adam's is exactly as we found him before, isn't he? He's sort of horizontal. Right, I mean, he's actually not quite being lifted up, but he's definitely kind of following that similar curve. Grace. Yeah, right. The line of God's body is almost identical to the line of Adam's. There are some key differences which we'll talk about in a minute. But these lines are almost exactly parallel. Max.
Is that to represent a Margaret Dan?
Brilliant. Yes, exactly right. There's an awful lot more that's going to do that too. But let's make a note of this too. I cannot promise that you will be able to fit all of the notes on that page. There's quite a lot to say. So just be thoughtful about how you're doing it. I'm almost guaranteeing you won't be able to fit it on. Some of it you'll have to write on the page after. Draw these lines in, but be a little bit careful. Don't go over the feet. And while you're doing that, have a look at the feet and think about what I might be pointing you towards.
Well, they just copy
There's no such thing as copy and paste. Michelangelo, he did all of this, right? The Sistine Chapel's ceiling is really tall. Has anyone been there? Been to the Vatican?
How was he climbing?
It's really tall. He had scaffolding, but I'm sure I've heard that he got like really bad. Like he was lying down with his paintbrushes. Like this is all done on wet plaster, so you've got to work really quickly, paint over the wet plaster before it dries, and then it kind of seals it all in. But yeah, he was lying down. And the Sistine Chapel, he did it all himself. It was huge. Like, yeah, the physical effort, it took him, I can't remember how long, at least a couple of years, I think. A long, long time to do. So why am I talking about feet? Look at the feet of Adam and God.
You can't see the picture, but
Right, you can see it on here.
at the same time.
Right? Firstly, if you spend a long time looking at this painting, as I've had to teach it for the last few years, you inevitably your eye gets drawn to certain features. Now, they've not got totally weird feet, but there's something odd about that big toe, isn't there? Sort of sticking out a bit. Now, I'm not asking you to interpret what a weird big toe means, because that would be ridiculous, but Michelangelo was an artistic genius. The problem is not he couldn't draw feet properly. Okay, he was among many other things a complete expert in anatomy. He dissected corpses, which he probably shouldn't have been doing at the time, but he did a lot of that. He knew human anatomy extremely well. He could recreate it in exquisite detail. Again, we'll see that when we look at the sculptures. This is not a mistake. Artistic geniuses like Michelangelo do not make mistakes. If he's got a weird toe, there's a reason. He's asking us to notice it. And what do we notice? Well, the minute you look at that weird foot, your eye is kind of drawn to this weird foot, and you go, oh man, they've got the same weird feet. No. Look at their faces. Look at the eyes. Am I being weird? Or, okay, God's older, but isn't he like the older version of Adam? Or, father and son or something. But they look related, don't they?
I do kind of see it. Like, I love the ears.
You've got these quite kind of distinctive lips, quite expressive lips. The nose is sort of, there's something to that nose, isn't there? The eyes are very similar shape, the eyebrows, the ears, the hands. Look, those are, if you just saw that, it looks like it's the same arm, doesn't it? In fact, okay, we've talked about the foot, but look at the leg. Those legs are very, very similar. Michelangelo's good at drawing legs. It's not that he only could do one type of leg. He was showing us something, and it's exactly as Max has already told us, right? So many similarities. So, Adam and God, I'm going to try and keep my notes here really concise. Parallel positions. Legs. Feet. Face. All very similar. And exactly what Max has already told us. This is a really beautiful use of symbolism. Michelangelo is showing us Adam has been made in God's image. Yeah. No, don't worry, because I'm already video streaming thing for Izzy anyway, so you can
A rock or a building in the background. Kind of like a church.
No, wow. Ooh, I've never spotted that. I know what you mean. Oh man. I could go into that. That's interesting, but I'm not. I'll if we get time tomorrow, I might go on that. That's interesting. What is the difference, though? While we're focusing on bodies and positions and composition, what is the difference between Adam and God?
Facial hair, clothes.
Okay, facial hair, clothes. Right, yeah. Adam is naked. He's just like being born, right? So there's this sort of sense of, well, he's naked, he's just been born. What might, you've got to switch off some of your modernity. What might we understand from God being older than Adam? He's older and wiser. There's this sense of, well, God is older. God is older, which does, it gives us a sense of his wisdom, omniscience, maybe even his power, his authority. Like I said, you've got to switch off that modern part of your brain that says, oh, well, just because somebody's older doesn't mean they're blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Fundamentally, Michelangelo and his audience would understand that somebody is older. That means they've got more experience. They know more than you. You respect them. They have authority over you. Chris. God's higher up. Brilliant. Absolutely right. God is higher up than Adam. I don't think I need to explain that in much more detail than that. Like, he's in an elevated position. What else? Let's be real. I mean, I might need to tell you this. But
What's the green?
we'll come to that. That is an interesting feature. Anthony?
Adam's touching the ground and God is being held up by angels.
Good. Okay. So Adam on ground. Right. Think back to what we were saying about that horizontality. He's coming from the earth. He's earthy. He's sort of close to those forces of death God is sort of floating on high, as it were. Look at the positions of the chest and belly. Adam is sort of a little bit twisted away. He's kind of concave. He's sort of closed in. He can't even hold his hand up. We'll talk about all of that, the hands in a minute, but he can't even hold his hand up. He's sort of using his leg to prop it up. But even though their bodies are in the same line, Adam is concave. He's weaker. He's passive. Hi, David. All of this is being recorded, so you can watch it later. You're welcome. He's weaker. He's passive. He's sort of receptive. Right? Adam's not particularly active, is he? He's not doing much. He's just sort of leaning back, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen to him. Yeah.
It's like God is bringing salvation because God's hand isn't weaker or anything, or God isn't weaker because he is God.
Yeah, well, God is very godly, isn't he? Look at the difference. Even though it's like this is the genius of it, right? Same line, so our eyes are drawn to the fact that they're parallel, and as Grace said, God is higher up. But look at the power in the gesture of God. He's so active and energetic. The chest is kind of broad and strong, and he's sort of doing something. Yeah? God is active, dynamic, energetic, powerful. He's alive. And this whole half of the piece is bustling with energy. Look at his hair. Look at that nice green thing that Max pointed at. Look at all this sort of frilly stuff. It's all sort of blossoming out. His hair sort of waving in the wind. His beard even. I mean, for goodness sake, beard don't move like that. But it's almost like there's this divine wind blowing through. Or maybe he's kind of coming down. Right? He's sort of swooping in and going, "Vroom, I'm going to give you life." Max.
If you look at the fingers on Adam, it's kind of like not pointing towards God. God.
God's doing the pointing, isn't he?
But because Adam's it's going back to the weak thing.
Absolutely.
He's too weak to to hold his finger or
Yeah.
fingers out if they're just within a line.
Perfect. Absolutely. His hand is limp. It's completely like lifeless. There's the only place we really see any life in Adam is the kind of the gaze. He's sort of looking at God, but actually even then he's sort of like, where is he looking? He's sort of maybe looking at what's going on with the hands, but he doesn't seem to be paying attention to it. It's almost like he's looking past the whole thing. He's sort of just dreaming. God, on the other hand, is like, bam, this is what I'm doing. There's power in this reach. Power, life, all that stuff. I'm not going to repeat it. You can sort of see that it's all one gesture, isn't it? God swooping down, and you know, we almost expect an electric shock.
Oh, why does it look like
Doesn't it? I feel like these guys are kind of holding him up. Maybe well, this is a whole scene. If you're asking about that bit, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Like I said with the toes, get rid of all this stuff. Like I said with the toes, Michelangelo doesn't make mistakes. Anything that looks a bit kind of crunchy and weird and like, oh, what's going on? We are being told to pay attention to this corner here as well. He's asking us to like, especially this bit. Like, what is that finger doing? That is odd. I'll leave that question with you. Back away.
On like the right side, it's like, but like I said, but on the left side, it's kind of just a bit right there.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah, fold away once.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm pointing out a lot of features here, and I'm hoping I don't have to do an awful lot of the interpretation for you. It's pretty clear, yeah? God is giving life to Adam. He has all power.